Senator Rennick.
Thank you, Acting Madam Deputy Chair. And I rise to speak in favour of this motion for the very simple reason that this side of the chamber cares about the environment. Cares about the environment. You know, for so long we've heard that side of the chamber pretend to care about the environment, but when the actual action, when the rubber hits the road, they go running. And it's not just the environment that we care about. We care about the economy, because without cheap energy we cannot power the homes and the businesses that provide jobs to the hard-working Australians across the country. And it's not just the economy and it's not just the environment, it's about our farmland and it's about our culture. And most of all, it is about respect. Respect of property. And I'll read out what this motion says for the benefit of those listening at home, because it matters. This matters. This is an inquiry into the construction of transmission lines and windmills, etc., across our country, across our farmlands, across our oceans, across our national parks. And some of the issues we're going to be looking at, and I'll read them out, is the provision and disbursement of compensation under Commonwealth, state and territory governments' compulsory access and acquisition. Now, compensation. This is very, very important, because if there's one thing that governments are very, very good at doing, is screwing people, is shafting them. And we do not want to see farmers and our fishermen and whoever else get destroyed by the government. I hear from constituents every day whose government, the bureaucrats, are putting up wall after wall after wall after wall of impediments on their lives. You know, I think people are more than happy to pay some taxes in return for essential services, but they're not happy for governments to control them to within an inch of their lives. Here's another thing that this inquiry wants to look at, is to identify best practice approaches to the development and implementation of a national approach to compulsory access. Now, best practice is something that is sadly lacking in government. The words quality assurance never pass the lips of a bureaucrat. There is only one word that ever comes out of their mouth, and that is the word no. It's not like, yes, we can find a way to do that. No, 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 no. Never that. No, no. It's always no. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. You know, we just saw it recently in estimates in the RAT committee, where we had a bureaucrat on over $900,000 complain that his 2,000 staff had to answer 400 questions over a 5-week period. No, that's all too hard. That's all too hard. But that's our bureaucracy for you. When it actually comes to serving you, they don't want to know about it. But when it comes to controlling you, oh, they love it. They love it. You can just see them licking their lips. Another thing this inquiry is going to look at is measures required to secure the rights of landowners, farmers and fisheries to maintain and safeguard the continued productivity of agriculture and fisheries, including emergency management. Now, can somebody tell me how this doesn't matter? Property rights is a fundamental right of any democracy. This is something that warrants investigation. But of course, does the Albanese Labor government want transparency? No, of course not. Because so many times in this chamber, since the Albanese government has come to power, we have asked for the detail. We have asked for transparency, and we have not got it. I know my colleague Senator Duniam wanted a quarterly reporting from the Productivity Commission on the cost of energy prices. Now, don't you think I was taught this in the private sector. What gets measured gets improved. It's called benchmarking. But does the Albanese government want to measure anything? No, of course not. We asked for the vaccine contracts. Did we get them? No. We asked for the minutes of the National Cabinet. Did we get them? No. We asked for the details of how many nurses are employed in aged care centres on a 24-hour basis. Did we get that detail? No. No. Yet again, the Albanese government is running for cover because they know they don't want to actually compensate the farmers. They don't want to compensate our fishermen. I mean, these guys are determined to destroy primary and secondary industry in this country. And I've said this many times in this chamber. Who can remember the Button Plan of 1985 that destroyed manufacturing? Destroyed manufacturing. And of course, we replaced manufacturing with the Dawkins Plan in 1990, where we decided to send everyone to university so they could get a degree. And of course, our children today graduate from university broke and brainwashed, without one real-life skill in the world. So now we import everything. We import everything. And we have to go back to our basic values. We have to go back on the tools. And we cannot do that if we destroy our primary industry. Now, what else have we got on here? Personally, I think there's enough already, but I'm just going to read out compulsory acquisition. Oh, the interaction and efficiency of compulsory access. Secure land rights and best practice and proper compensation. And consultation. Consultation. Now, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And I'll just note, I'll mention Senator Pocock's contribution to this last night, where his idea of consultation is they're going to have the bureaucrats have a little committee to look at it. A bloke by the name of Andrew Dyer, who was the National Wind Farm Commissioner. I mean, this guy has been knee-deep in the renewable subsidy industry for years. For years. Well, the last time I looked, in a democracy, it is the representatives who actually do the scrutiny in this place, not the bureaucrats. Not the bureaucrats. And as we know from the last referendum, they are completely out of touch with the rest of the country on what really matters. They are the last people that we want looking at this issue. And speaking of bureaucrats, who can forget my last question to the CSIRO in the recent round of estimates, where I asked quite a reasonable question as to which one of the 40 models are we going to use to calculate net zero. That's right, the science is settled, but there's 40 different models. And of course the CSIRO answered, I can't wait to put this one up on my social media, this is going to run, is that, well, that's the great thing about science. You can have 40 different ways of calculating something and you all get the same result. Now, at that stage, Senator Walsh cut me off because I said to the chair at the time, Senator Walsh, I said, that's not an answer, Chair. She said, your time's up. Your time's up. Because what I would have responded is, you do get the same result, and that is that the taxpayer is being shafted, okay? Because they have a right to know which model of the 40 different models that are out there to calculate net zero is Australia going to use and which models are other countries going to use. Because we do not want any regulatory arbitrage going on here, whereby we start gaming the calculations. And I know this from another set of questions I asked in a CSIRO previously. The phytoplankton in the ocean, which absorbs 70% of the world's CO2, doesn't even come into it. All right, well, how on earth can you calculate your net contribution to carbon dioxide if you're not going to take a look at the full picture, the entire biodiversity of planet Earth, And I love planet Earth. I mean, when I was a young chap, I quit my job, I went backpacking around the world, I knocked back a job to work in Switzerland, kept travelling, went to 85 countries, climbed mountains, scuba dived, surfed, you named it. I love planet Earth. There's probably no one more qualified in this chamber to tell you how beautiful planet Earth is. And let me tell you something, Acting Deputy Chair President, I do not want to see those dirty, stinking wind turbines littering our coastlines, transmission, as a threat to the birds, as a threat to our whales. I mean, I'm following a page now, the New Jersey, up in New Jersey there, where whales are suddenly washing up on the beaches of New Jersey as they are building wind turbines. Has anyone looked at that? Has anyone looked at that? We're going to have transmission lines carving out huge scars across the Earth's surface. We're going to have these massive lithium mines, a very rare commodity. It's common, but it's a very rare commodity, a 1 or 2% content. So your lithium, for example, might be found at 1 to 2%. So you're going to have to mine 100 tonnes of ore to get 1 tonne of metal. But on top of that, you have stripping ratios. So then you might have a stripping ratio of 10 to 1. So suddenly, for 1 tonne of ore, you might have to mine 1,000 tonnes of dirt. I don't think that's going to be very good for the environment. Not at all. And, yet again, something, I love this Senate estimates process. There's the great Larry Marshall, the former CEO of the CSIRO, said that it costs 3 times the amount to recycle a battery as it does to actually make it. Now, of course, funnily enough, the CSIRO don't actually include the cost of recycling in their Gen Cost report. Here's that modelling again. Here's that modelling again. Because when it comes to the real world, we know that those on the other side of the chamber like to deal with feelings, like to deal with fantasies. Okay, and it's interesting because one of the last things that happened under the last Labor government was that they commissioned a report into an independent peer review of the Bureau of Meteorology. And you know what they found? I'll tell you what they found. They did not rate the observation practices of the Bureau of Meteorology as world-class. They did not rate the observation practices. You know what the observation practices are? It's called taking the temperature, measuring the temperature. So what did they do? They thought, well, if we can't measure properly and accurately, because they had a margin of error of plus or minus half a degree, the world standard is, or the world standard for margin of error when you measure temperature is plus or minus 0.2 of a degree. So what did they do? They started homogenising data. Now, that's a posh word for basically fiddling the books. Now, as someone who was an accountant once upon a time, if I fiddled the books, I'd go to jail. I would go to jail. But, of course, the beautiful thing about these bureaucrats in Canberra, and now, of course, the Bureau, and I want to be careful about the Bureau because they've got the Climate Division and then they've got their Weather Division. Now, the guys in the Weather Division do what they should be doing, which is measuring and taking the temperature, right? Measuring and reporting and doing that forecasting. And you've got the Climate Division. That's effectively what's known as a euphemism for the fear-mongering division, where they constantly come up with these big doom and gloom forecasts. I think we heard Senator Wilson saying that, if we don't act now, it's too late. The world's going to come to an end very soon. If we don't do something, it's all going to change. Well, let me tell you something. It's not going to change, okay? Because even without radiative forcing, the temperature, the climate is always going to change because it spins on its axis every 24 hours, rotates around the sun every 365 degrees. It's slightly tilted to its orbit because of the gravity of the moon. We have the Milankovitch cycles. Ty, Braco Ty and Johannes Kepler, they discovered this in the early 1700s, that the Earth travels in an ellipse and not an orbit. That means at certain times of the year it's going to be further from the sun than other times. That creates weather volatility, people. This is life. Absorb it. Do not be afraid of it. And yet what we have on this other side of the chamber is fear-mongering. They use feelings for fear-mongering rather than dealing with facts. And the facts of the matter is that renewables are going to have a terrible impact on our environment, on our biodiversity, on our bird life, on our marsupials, the hairy-nosed wombat. I know how much Senator Hughes loves the hairy-nosed wombat. She talks about it all the time. We love our koala bears. Who can remember the old greater ostentatious back in '83? How much can a koala bear? How much can a koala bear? Well, let me tell you something. I'll have to go soon, Anna, but when I do, I go with this thought in mind. I will say to the Labor Party, put your money where your mouth is and back this motion.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.